One thing that I find interesting with Israel is that I always say Israelis are like obsessed with mourning and obsessed with partying. And it's one of the most amazing transitions to see when Israel switches from like one of the most somber days, and then you have this transition period. And while maybe today might not be the day of street parties because of Corona, but it's truly like interesting to watch, whether it's remembrance for a Purim Suda or remembrance in a Pesach Seder, or if it's remembrance on Yom Hazikaron, and then the partying. So I think there's something very special about the fact that we can remember our loved ones, and that we can remember our history and where we came from, and we can celebrate at the same time. And with that, guys, we are going to go into, we're going to have Sarri Singer from Strength to Strength. She's going to join us. She is one of the co-sponsors of this event today. And Sarri is going to share with us her, she's going to share with us about her organization. And she's going to share with us why she started. She was the lady, the powerhouse behind when I wanted to get the speakers. I called in Sarri. She managed to get, she has an organization where she knows many of the victims of terror, sadly. And she started Strength to Strength. She will be on. We also then have a slight change in schedule because of our delays, our technical delays getting Facebook to stream. We will then have at 3:30 the shears. So we're going to have Bat Galim Shear. She is one of the moms, the famous three moms, when they lost their three sons in a terrorist attack. And I guess every family counts just as much, but it was in the real beginning of real social media and spreading. And this became a worldwide story. And we're very grateful that they were able to switch their schedule to accommodate us. And they're going to be at 3:30, they're going to be coming on. So until then, we will have a break for one moment, and then we will be going into Sarri. And thank you so much for all joining us. And again, I beg you all to please share, like, comment, and we will do the shares at 3:30. Until then, we will wait. We will have a little break. Okay, Sarri, welcome and thank you for being here. A powerhouse in herself. I just gave you an intro while we were waiting for you.
Okay.
So we would love to hear from you and to hear about Strength to Strength and your vision, and share with us a little, and then we will have the shares next.
Sure. So I really started Strength to Strength because when I came back from Israel after my own attack a year later, I couldn't really connect with anybody. There were no organizations here except the 9/11 groups, and nobody really was letting me in because I wasn't a 9/11 survivor. So my parents taught me, if you don't find what you're looking for, you create it yourself. And so Strength to Strength was established to work with existing organizations globally to help bring victims of terrorism together, no matter where they were, no matter what religion they are, no matter what background, as long as they are civilian victims of terrorism. And the way we determine this is that our organization works with existing legal nonprofits on the ground that are working directly with the families. So currently we're working with organizations in 14 different countries around the world. We are volunteer driven. There is no one paid on our staff, and we are survivor driven. And we run different programs from weekend retreats to survivor circle meetings, to memorial events for victims in different countries. Unfortunately, with everything going on right now with COVID, we've had to shift our programming, and so everything has gone online, as most of us are doing today. So 3 days a week, we have Zoom meetings for our victims at different times because people are in different time zones. We've had victims come on from Ireland, from the UK, from France, from Jordan, Israel, Argentina, Colombia, and the United States and Australia. And again, it just depends on the time. We have a stretching, a workout class for our victims during the week to help them. We're going to be doing an art class coming up, and we're trying to really do things to help them them get through what's going on. But really, we're just a resource. We are peer-to-peer support for victims. We are there to make sure that victims feel that they're not alone and that they have the support if and when they need it. And the most amazing thing about this is that, and all of us will say this, is that while we all wish that this didn't happen to us, we're so blessed to meet all these people from around the world that share a bond with us, because our experiences are like nothing else, and we understand each other and we can connect on a very different level. And so we are just about making sure that people feel safe and secure, that they have a place and that they don't feel alone.
So Sarri, I have a question for you. So two things. Firstly, I heard Rabbi Sachs speak on Yom HaShoah, and he spoke about a museum in Mexico. And he said it was the most incredible in Mexico City, a Holocaust museum started by like two young girls that grew into a huge project sponsored by the state. And he said it was the most fascinating Holocaust museum ever. And one of the things he said was the first floor was all about the Holocaust. The second floor was all about other genocides. And then he said you couldn't leave. You had to start at the top floor. And you learned about the Holocaust. Then you learned about other genocides. And then you had to say, how could you take action before you could actually exit the building? And I think in a way, your story of strength to strength is similar to the vision of these ladies. And can you maybe talk a little bit about the importance of us understanding, like as much as there's victims of terror in Israel, and that there are so many victims, and to understand this concept?
I think that that's a very important point. I mean, we talk about, for me, I didn't realize until this happened and until I started connecting globally the impact of terrorism in other countries. And I think when we bring in Israelis and we bring in kids for a program we run called our Young Ambassadors program, the Israeli kids, first of all, bring so much to the program. It's apparent in the sense that other kids don't know what's going on in Israel. But the point is that the Israelis sometimes don't realize what's going on in other countries. And it is rampant terrorism throughout Europe and South America and other places. We just don't always hear about it. And I think we have to keep in mind that terrorism doesn't discriminate. It's not about one country. It's a world problem. And we need to actualize that idea of how are we all going to come together to combat this hate that terrorism perpetuates. And I think that, the advocacy that I've been doing over the years has shown me the importance of being a voice, not only being a voice for the 17 people on my bus that didn't get to go home to their families that day, but every single Israeli family that I've connected with, and even the ones that I haven't connected with. When I share my story, I'm sharing their story somewhere else. And I think it's important. These stories have to be told. And we have to realize that while it's happening in Israel, there are other countries that are dealing with this as well. And we all need to come together to combat terrorism. It can't just be about Israel. It really needs to be about all of us. And that's really what Strength to Strength embodies. The fact that we're all in this together in the world, and that all over the world, people have been impacted by terrorism. And I might not have been able to have control over what happened to me that day, but I do have control over how I live my life going forward. And that life needs to be a life of love and kindness instead of hate. And I think that's what we as victims are doing. When we share our stories, we're showing the love and the kindness that are in us and sharing it with others and letting them know that we are not alone, that victims are strong. And that's the way that we combat the terrorism together. But if we don't combat it together, then the terrorists win. So that's why I think it's so important, the work that we're doing and really bringing people together to show the differences. We might grow up differently. We might have different backgrounds and different religions, but what we've experienced bonds us, and therefore we can make a difference if we all come together.
And I think the point you raised, that like terrorism doesn't discriminate, is such a pertinent point. We've seen in Israel that terrorists have killed babies, they've killed religious people, they've killed old people, they've killed black hat looking people, they've killed secular people, they've killed people who live in territories, they've killed people who live in the big cities, they've gone from, the promenade in Tel Aviv and hotels in Tel Aviv, or Netanya beachfront in the heart of the central of Israel, all the way to wherever their hate can reach. So for sure, it does not discriminate. The last question I have for you before you introduce our speakers, maybe you can share with us a little bit of your journey as a survivor. I'd like to know, and I ask this to the other survivors or people who have lost bereaved families. Is Yom Zikaron a particularly hard day? Is this something, or do you have post-traumatic stress from your experiences? Is this something that's like real to you every hour of every day? Does Yom Zikaron make it feel worse for you to feel?
So I can honestly say that not a day doesn't go by where I don't think about what happened. But my attitude towards this, and again, I always say there's not a one size fits all. Every victim, every survivor, every bereaved family member has a different way of dealing with it. For me, my feeling is that I don't want to look at what happened before. I want to look towards the future and what am I doing to make a difference? God gave me a second chance. How am I making sure that I'm taking advantage of every opportunity to do everything that I need to while I'm still here? On Yom Hazikaron, it is very difficult. It's probably a harder day than the anniversary of my attack because I'm not in Israel. Because when I was in Israel on Yom Hazikaron, it's being with everybody and connecting and feeling the meaning. And especially on days like this, you want to feel connected to those that understand what you've been through. And the fact that the day is for fallen soldiers and victims of terrorism, this day is all about us. And so I feel sometimes it's hard to be so far away from Israel on Yom Hazikaron. Usually on this day, I'm speaking at a number of high schools, and that definitely makes it a little easier for me on the day because I know that when I'm speaking, I'm sharing the story of the people on my bus that day, and their voice is being raised and heard, and they're not being forgotten. And I think that that's my intention, and so that gets me through the day. But I definitely feel like Yom Hazikaron is a hard time, and a hard time to be away from Israel, and a hard time to be away from a lot of the families and the people that I'm close with there and that I feel close with and connected to because of our experiences. But I also believe that, opportunities like this, of being able to share stories and to talk about this and to have this ability, even though we're all, at least in New York, we're all, sort of locked in, and I know in Israel also, and other places in the country, to be able to talk about this over the internet and for people to hear our stories and to really internalize and understand the complexity of what's happened. I think that gives us some comfort in knowing that people are not forgotten, and this day means something and is meaningful to people that maybe haven't gone through terrorism. So for me, that's what I feel the day is in terms of sharing experiences so that other people can understand. But I'm sure, as for every victim has probably spoken, it is a very difficult day. And especially under the current situation, it's even more difficult. But, knowing that I can see some of the families last night and today in Israel that have been on here that I'm close with, people that I have tremendous amount of respect for and care about for very much, definitely eases and makes it more meaningful.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective.